Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today we're tackling a question we've heard from quite a few of you. Is Cameco a good time to buy now?
It's definitely a hot topic right now, especially with everything happening in the energy sector.
Absolutely. So our mission today is to really explore Cameco's financial health, its market position, check out the recent news, and look at the future outlook. We'll try to unpack everything you need to sort of form your own informed opinion about this major uranium producer.
Sounds like a plan. There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, there is. And hey, before we really jump in, we always appreciate it if you subscribe, like this discussion, and maybe drop a comment below.
Yeah, definitely.
And seriously, if there's a specific company you want us to look into next time, please let us know in those comments. We actually do read them and love getting your suggestions.
We too.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Let's lay the groundwork by looking at the fundamentals, Cameco's financial performance and where they stand in the market. What's the latest on their revenue and earnings picture?
Well, what's really fascinating here is just how closely Cameco's financials are tied to the whole nuclear energy sector. It's a very specific space. Now, getting the absolute latest summarized Q2 2025 revenue figures isn't always straightforward without digging deep into filings, but we do know their Q2 earnings, which they reported back on July 31st, were actually quite strong.
Oh, yeah. How strong?
They posted earnings per share of 51 cents. That beat estimates by a good $1.22.
Wow. Okay. That's significant.
It is. And maybe even more telling, revenues were up nearly 47% compared to the same quarter last year.
47%? That's huge.
Yeah, it really points to, robust operational performance. And it suggests some pretty positive momentum building in the nuclear sector overall. Of course, for the nitty-gritty details, you'd really need to look at their latest 10Q filing. That's where all the fine print is.
Right, the quarterly report. But nearly 47% revenue growth and a big earnings beat. That definitely gets your attention. So beyond that recent strong quarter, how does Cameco look financially, sort of bigger picture? Do they have a solid foundation?
Yeah, that's a good question. Connecting this to the broader view, Cameco typically maintains a pretty strong balance sheet. They tend to have manageable debt levels. And that's really crucial, isn't it? Especially for navigating the ups and downs in the uranium market. It could be pretty volatile.
Having that stability must be key.
Absolutely. It gives them resilience. Now, again, specific verifiable numbers from the very latest balance sheet or cash flow statements, those aren't immediately available without checking the most recent 10Q or maybe the 10K, the annual report. But the historical pattern suggests they're pretty prudent with their finances. They seem to prioritize stability.
Okay, so it sounds like a solid foundation financially. But what about their actual place in the industry? What's their competitive edge? How do they stack up?
Right, so this raises an important point about where they sit in the global picture. Cameco isn't just any uranium producer. Their position is one of the world's largest. They play a really significant role in the whole global nuclear energy supply chain. Think about that.
So a major player then?
Definitely. Their competitive advantage really comes down to a couple of things. First, a substantial resource base. They've got access to a lot of uranium. And second, they have significant operational capacity. The mines, the mills, the expertise.
Resources and capacity. Makes sense.
But, it's not all smooth sailing. They do face challenges. The price of uranium fluctuates. It's a commodity market after all. And of course, there's competition from other big producers out there in places like Kazakhstan or Russia or Australia.
Right. Always competition. All right, let's maybe shift gears a little bit. We've talked fundamentals. Let's try to unpack this from a different angle, maybe the technical side and the recent market mood surrounding the stock.
Sure.
How's the stock itself been behaving? What are the charts telling us?
Well, Cameco's stock price has certainly shown volatility. That's not really unusual for a company in this sector, honestly. It's kind of par for the course. Its movements often mirror broader market trends, obviously, but they also react strongly to specific things hitting the nuclear energy industry.
Like what?
Oh, changes in uranium prices, which we just mentioned, or maybe regulatory news, policy shifts, things like that. Investors looking at the technicals often use tools like moving averages to spot trends or the RSI, the Relative Strength Index, to gauge if the stock might be overbought or oversold.
And people can find those easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Platforms like TradingView have all that data readily available for anyone who wants to dive into the charts.
Okay. So that volatility. What's been happening recently, say, over the last 3 months or so that might be feeding into this? Any specific news or analyst calls impacting things?
Yeah, it's actually been a pretty active few months, which gives us a good sense of the current sentiment. Let's start with September 2025. So on September 16th, the stock took a bit of a dip, about 4.6%, after a downgrade from Wall Street Zen.
Ouch. A downgrade.
Yeah, but it's important to put that in context. The overall analyst consensus still leans towards a buy rating. The average price target is actually around $89.55.
So one downgrade, but overall still positive.
Pretty much. We also saw the Bank of New Hampshire trim its stake, which might add a little selling pressure, reflects maybe some shifting institutional views. But then, on the other hand, you had major brokers, Scotiabank, BMO Capital Markets, CLSA. They all reaffirmed positive outlooks. Some even put targets over $100.
Over $100. Okay, so there's definitely some strong long-term confidence there, despite maybe short-term wobbles.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Then if we look back at August 2025, remember that strong Q2 earnings beat we talked about?
Yeah, the 47% revenue jump.
Right. Well, beyond that, Cameco also announced something interesting. A projected $170 million increase in its equity share of Westinghouse Electric Company's adjusted Q2 EBITDA.
Explain that a bit. Westinghouse, they're big in nuclear services, right?
Exactly. And EBITDA, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's a key measure of profit. So this projected increase from their Westinghouse investment is a significant plus for Cameco's overall financial picture.
Okay, so another positive signal.
Definitely. And following those strong earnings, you had banks like National Bank Shares and BMO Capital Markets reiterate outperform ratings on the stock.
Got it. And what about July?
Well, July 2025 is really interesting because the company benefited quite a bit from surging uranium prices. There's just this growing global interest in nuclear power as a clean energy source, and that directly helps Cameco.
The macro trend is helping them.
For sure. And their strategy seems to be focusing on long-term supply contracts. That gives them pricing power and revenue stability, which is great in a commodity business. Oh, and also, things look stable internally. They elected 10 directors at their annual meeting, suggesting continuity in leadership.
Okay, so a lot happening. Analyst upgrades, downgrades, strong earnings, benefiting from uranium prices. What about insiders? Anyone high up buying or selling shares? Does that tell us anything?
That's always a good question, trying to gauge internal confidence. So on September 10th, 2025, there was an insider filing, an SEC Form 144. It indicated an intent to sell 500 shares.
500 shares? Is that a lot?
Not really, no. It's important to see it in context. It was a relatively small transaction, likely just routine, maybe personal financial planning. It wasn't generally seen as indicating anything major about the company's prospects or broader sentiment from management. Not really a red flag.
Okay, that makes sense. So not a significant signal there. All right, we've looked at the past, the present fundamentals, the technicals, recent news. Now let's look ahead. This is where it gets really interesting, right? What's on the horizon for Cameco? What potential catalysts or maybe risks should investors be watching over the next few months?
Absolutely. The forward look is key. And the next 3 months actually have several specific dates and events that could definitely influence the stock. So in October 2025, first up is October 10th. That's the S&P TSX Index and Uranium ETF quarterly rebalance.
The rebalance, right. Why does that matter?
Well, index funds and ETFs have to adjust their holdings to match the index changes. So if Cameco's weighting changes, or if money flows into or out of uranium ETFs, it can cause buying or selling pressure, usually short-term volatility.
Okay. Short-term noise, potentially. What else in October?
Then on October 15th, there's the annual Canadian Thanksgiving operations update. That could give us some fresh clues about how production is tracking.
Got it. Moving into November.
November 2025 is a big one. November 5th is the target for the Q3 earnings release.
Ah, the next earnings report. Expectations must be high after Q2.
You bet. Given the ongoing strength in uranium contracts we've seen and their track record, the market will be watching very closely. They'll want to see the contract pipeline, how prices are realized versus what analysts expect.
Okay, earnings are always huge. Anything else in November?
Yeah, later in the month, around the 22nd, we'll start seeing the big 13F filings from hedge funds and other institutions.
Right, where the big funds reveal their holdings.
Exactly. It gives you a sense of where the institutional money, the quote-unquote smart money, is positioning itself. That can sometimes influence sentiment too.
And December.
December 2025, around December 10th. Cameco is expected to release its preliminary production and capital guidance for 2025. This is really important because it sets expectations for the year ahead, how much they plan to produce, how much they'll spend. It can really make analysts and investors adjust their models.
Okay, so quite a few scheduled events to keep an eye on. But beyond those dates on the calendar, are there any whispers? Market rumors, potential game changers that aren't quite confirmed yet, those speculative catalysts.
Yeah, it's always interesting what kind of chatter bubbles up, especially in a sector like this. What's fascinating here is some of the recurring themes. For instance, there are kind of persistent rumors about a potential big long-term uranium supply deal, maybe with a major utility in Asia or Europe.
And that would be big news.
Oh, absolutely. A major new contract like that could significantly boost their secured revenue and really solidify their future earnings. There's also ongoing market chatter suggesting Camo might be looking at strategic acquisitions or joint ventures, maybe buying more uranium assets or partnering up, possibly even expanding outside Canada more significantly.
So M&A activity is a potential catalyst.
Exactly. Then there's the geopolitical angle. There's always talk about a potential geopolitical supply disruption premium.
What does that mean?
Well, the idea is if global tensions rise, especially in key supply regions like Kazakhstan or involving Russia,
Mhm.
it could disrupt supply chains or make buyers nervous. That can push uranium prices higher and make a stable Western supplier like Camo look even more valuable. It could command a premium.
Yeah, benefiting from being seen as a reliable source in uncertain times.
Precisely. And one more thing. There are sometimes unconfirmed reports or speculation about potential changes in Canadian mining policies, like royalties or incentives. If the government were to review those, it could impact Cameco's long-term costs and cash flow, for better or worse, depending on the changes.
Right, policy risk or potentially policy upside. Lots of what ifs there.
Definitely speculative, but things the market watches.
Okay, so potential upsides and catalysts. But every investment has risks. What should we be mindful of with Cameco? What are the potential downsides or headwinds?
That's crucial. Always got to look at the risks. This raises the important question, what could go wrong? First, there are stock-specific risks. Cameco, as we've said, is inherently tied to uranium price volatility. If prices fall, it hurts their bottom line. Simple as that. They also face operational risks. Mining isn't easy. Things can go wrong, production can be interrupted, and regulatory changes are always a possibility, impacting permits or costs.
Where can people find more detail on those?
Their latest 10K, the annual report, usually has a very detailed section outlining all those specific risks. It's required reading, really.
Okay. And beyond risks specific to Cameco itself?
Well, there are broader market and sector risks. An economic downturn could dampen energy demand globally, including for nuclear. And there's always competition from other energy sources, right? Renewables keep getting cheaper, natural gas prices fluctuate. Nuclear has to compete in that broader energy mix.
So company risks and market risks. Got it. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Fundamentals, technicals, news, catalysts, risks. Let's try to bring it all together. What's the bottom line? For someone considering an investment in Cameco right now, what's the overall investment thesis look like?
Okay, let's try to synthesize this. If we connect all these pieces, Cameco, in our view, gets an overall rating of 7. Look, its position as a leading global uranium producer that offers significant long-term stability. It's a critical player in an important energy sector, especially with the focus shifting towards cleaner energy.
That's the core strength.
That's the core strength. However, and it's a big however, the stock is heavily influenced by those sector-specific risks, especially uranium price swings and just broader market volatility. It can be quite a bumpy ride.
So maybe not for the faint of heart.
Perhaps not for short-term traders looking for quick, smooth gains. Given these factors, Cameco probably profiles better as a potential long-term investment rather than a short-term trade. Investors really should prioritize digging into the company's fundamentals, understanding the uranium market dynamics, and watching those sector developments, rather than just relying on technical chart patterns to time entries and exits.
Focus on the long game and the underlying business.
Exactly. It's about the long-term story for a foundational energy supplier.
Okay. So we've seen Cameco as a strong, important player in the uranium market. Recent results have been positive. There are some interesting potential catalysts coming up. But it comes with that inherent volatility, maybe better suited for a patient long-term view. Considering that ongoing global push towards cleaner energy, with nuclear playing a key role and all those geopolitical factors swirling around, here's something to think about. How might future policy changes, maybe international climate agreements or unexpected breakthroughs in nuclear technology itself, how might those things further solidify or maybe even challenge Cameco's long-term position as a critical uranium supplier in the years ahead? What could be the next big wave to reshape their future?
That's a great question to ponder. The policy landscape is always shifting.
Well, we hope this discussion has given you a clearer picture of Cameco. As always, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, like this discussion if you found it useful, and please leave your thoughts or suggestions for companies you'd like us to explore next in the comments below.
We appreciate the feedback.
We really do. Thanks for joining us on Investing Talk Podcast.